Real pleasure to welcome all of you and especially our guests for this evening. I'll introduce them a little bit later, but I want to say, first of all, how grateful I am on this beautiful June day for Mother Earth in all its springtime glory. Last weekend, I was at Fish Creek Park in Calgary, and I saw 3 nests. I was able to spot 3 nests in front of me, and I just was so thankful for that reminder of young ones in our lives, and for parents and elders and all those who have taught us how to live in harmony and taking care of creation for thousands of years. In making treaties, promises were made to share that land with respect. And our network includes people from treaties 4, 6, 7, 8, and 11. And we also recognize the Otipemisiwak Métis government and Métis settlements that are unique to Alberta. And sadly, we see how these treaty promises have been broken by our settler governments. And as relative newcomers to this land, we desperately need to do better. As adults, we need to learn and teach our children how to live well together and not pollute and scar the land as we have done. I want to ask us to pray together and give thanks for the birds and the flowers and the showers, and the gardens growing, and for all the people who are gathered here this evening. And especially for Pat and Hayley. I give thanks for those who are really wanted to be here and will pick up the recording, and just that they're double booked tonight. And so we remember them. We open our hearts to listen, and Creator, inspire our actions this evening as we listen. Hi.
Hi.
I think it was back in March that or even late February, that I contacted Pat, and over the phone, I was offering her tobacco, and I still haven't got that tobacco to her. And but I was just so delighted that she agreed to be part of this webinar and around the conversation around the film Awasisak, Our Children, Our Future. And also very grateful for Hayley, who is the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit Learning Services Coordinator for Red Deer Public Schools. I met Pat, I think, maybe around 2008, 2009 at Blue Quills College, when they were beginning hosting reconciliation circles and talking about what that meant and how we went about it. And right up until our last in-person gathering of our network was in St. Albert, where Pat was the guest then too. So we're just very grateful for that long-standing relationship. And Hayley, I met in the work with the Remembering the Children Society in Red Deer, as we did the research and the recovering and the remembering and honoring of the children who went to the Red Deer Industrial School. And tomorrow is June 11th is Remembering the Children Day in Red Deer. And there will be a gathering at the monument that the society put up in the Red Deer City Cemetery. And Hayley has worked with us for the last 10 years and doing the education in the schools. And when we did the dedication of the monument, she managed to get 2 or 3 classrooms of children to be present at that time too. So just appreciate that working relationship very much. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Pat to introduce the film and how it all came to be.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Cecile, for the opportunity. Thank you, everyone that's on on this session for the opportunity to talk with you. I want to, like Cecile, acknowledge the creator. I want to acknowledge all of the ancestors, and all of you. All of you. I can't even think that it's been 16 years, approximately, Cecile. I mean, my goodness, time goes by. Well, we made 3 films, right? And this is the 3rd film. And they connect, of course, to all of us learning about how we are all treaty people. And, Wasasak, our children, our future. When we think about our children, when I think about those treaties, I think about the ancestors who thought 7 generations ahead in this process. And so, those were wise ancestors who thought about these treaties and all of us, that we are all related and we're to work together, and that the first peoples graciously have shared and continue to share. And so somewhere along the way in the story of colonialism, we've forgotten what that sharing is and how we are really genuinely to be on this path together. So I'm grateful to all of you. I sincerely am, because I really do believe for the rest of the time that I'm on this earth plane, that my work is about ally work, about bringing people in, that we do the work together and we do it with kindness and love. And we do it where we're inviting people to learn and to think very deeply, for example, about what does it mean to be treaty? What does it mean in how we agreed to share the land? What does it mean about how Indigenous peoples should benefit from the resources? What does it mean that, that we could have access to some of those resources? Right now, believe it or not, in Saddle Lake, we're under a boil water advisory. And I happen to be teaching right now at Blue Quills, a master's course of educational leadership. And so we get together on every second weekend, Friday nights and all day Saturday. And I ask the students, like, how is that impacting you? So can you imagine what they have to do, like in terms of hauling water into the schools? So the whole area of making these films, all 3, has been very, very intentional about trying to bring us together in a good, honorable way that we can learn about the importance of the land and how we look after the land, how important it is for all of us, and how we can come together to do the critical work of helping Indigenous people who graciously shared and continue to share. So that's really the big intent, of the films. And it's really ironic because the first film started with me witnessing white family members stepping up. And when I say white family members, I'm talking red, yellow, black, and white family, the human race. And what I witnessed firsthand were those white family members who stepped up to learn about the Indigenous history. And I witnessed that in a walk that I went on in Ontario. And it had a deeply profound impact on me. So that when I came back, because I am an avid walker, so I just simply got on a plane. I saw that the Mennonite Church of Canada were hosting this walk and educating people. And when I walked into that church, and what I saw that morning actually, were white family members who were stepping in to help us. It wasn't up to me to try to convince people that this is really important work, and we all live on these lands, and that I should have to convince people about how urgent this work is, because they were doing the work, and that deeply impacted me. I came back and I was still connected. I'm still connected to Blue Quills, even though I don't work there full time anymore. And so I asked the late Dr. Vincent Steinhauer, who was then president, if we could invite some of our ally friends from Ontario to come and help us in our area, that as white family members, their voices were very, very important. Because for me in this work, sometimes it's really hard. When I think about it, I've been doing this work since I was 12. I was a kid and trying to convince my social studies teacher about Native people, and really have done that my whole life. And so when I went to that walk with the people in Ontario, it deeply impacted me. And so that was how all of these films come out of that. So I give credit to the fact that it was white family members who made a conscious choice to educate themselves, and in educating themselves, then they can influence their family, their friends, their businesses, the churches, and we can push it out so that we have a better sense of social and economic justice, because things have to change in Canada. The poverty, the illnesses, the boil waters in a nation that's got 10,000 people. Why do we have to worry about water, for example? So that really is what all of these films are about, and they're intentionally free. So they're used far and wide. You can use them, you can share them. So I think for now, that's what I will say, but I will, with my heart out to all of you, thank you, because you have such a critical role to play in this to help us. It's really hard work for me to be constantly trying to convince people of the injustices in this country. So when you use your voice and you say, hey, did you know that? Or did you watch this? Or did you know that they bombed reserves? That they used them as bombing ranges? Did you know that? And they're in these confined little spaces when they agreed to share the land. Your voice is so critically important. So I say thank you. So maybe we can watch the film and then have a conversation after.
Give us some update on where the K-6 social studies curriculum is. And I know she was mentioning how little there is about treaties, and if she would elaborate on that, that will be great.
Sure. Hello.
Hello, Hayley.
So in regard, so just to jump right in about the curriculum, the K-6 draft social studies curriculum has just been released in March. It is, they're asking for teachers to pilot it in September before they would do any final changes to it, and then it would come out for all teachers in September 2025. So right now, with regards to treaty being taught in the curriculum, it is mentioned very briefly in 2 grades. So in one, it's taught in grade 3, very briefly, where it talks about the numbered treaties in Alberta, Treaty 6, 7, 8, and also Treaty 4 and 10, where they have to identify them on a map and do some mapping with it. There's very little in knowledge and understanding and skills and procedures for students at that age. They have in knowledge, it says First Nations negotiated and signed treaties to preserve peace and continue living on the land. And the government of Canada negotiated and signed treaties to gain access to land for settlement and natural resources. It has skills and procedures ask students to hypothesize different reasons treaties were negotiated and signed by First Nations and the government of Canada. So that's under skills and procedures. And then in there's no mention of treaties in grade 4 or 5. And then in grade 6, it talks about treaty, Aboriginal and treaty rights of Aboriginal peoples in Canada, firm and recognized collective rights in regard to Section 25 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And it also has a little bit on treaties within the Royal Proclamation of 1769. So that is all that it mentions of treaties in the draft social studies curriculum. It doesn't mention one of the other, I guess, a little bit different than treaties is with Indian residential schools. In 2015, I believe it was, the then education minister came out with a ministerial order mandating the teaching of Indian residential schools to all grades from K to 12 in Alberta. And so that has been happening in the schools. And then now with National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, there's a strong focus on teaching about that in September. But then with this new draft curriculum, there's not one mention of Indian residential schools from K to 6 in it at all. So even kind of going backwards with that, it's, I guess, interesting because schools are teaching about it. Schools are teaching about treaties right now. We have a lot of literature, and in English language arts and literacy, we're teaching about treaties. In Saskatchewan, as an example, they teach about it from grades kindergarten all the way up, and they start with talking about what promises are and what friendships are, and what when you make a promise to someone, what that means, and responsibility. So it's really interesting how they found a way to bring treaties in even to the younger students who can understand it. But right now, with the draft curriculum from Alberta Education, it's not done really well. Even the wording in there, in my opinion, comes from a very colonial point of view, and asking students to hypothesize why treaties were signed when we can, listen to Diana Steinhauer, like in the film here, who talks about treaty understanding from First Nations point of view. And we can look at treaty understanding from the British point of view, the Crown point of view. I don't know why we're asking students to hypothesize about that, but that's, I guess, my opinion. The other thing is, when we know this, and I do invite all of you to even go into the social studies curriculum and have a look at it. It is certainly something, because they are saying we're piloting it, we're open for feedback. I think this is the time for Albertans to go in and look at that and provide feedback to the government on, what they like about it, what they don't like about it, what they'd like to see in it, what is in it that maybe they would like to not see in it, and to provide that feedback. And there is a website on the Learn Alberta site, and I can put the link for it into the chat. I think I should be able to do that. And that you can go in and look at the curriculum for yourself, as well as, and look at what you can do about providing feedback for that curriculum. I think it's really important for us as Albertans to do that. It's interesting. It just feels like we're going back we had this opportunity to update the social studies curriculum from when it was last done in 2005. So over almost 20 years ago, to update it in a good way and to work with First Nations, Inuit, Métis, and really get their perspective in there, as opposed to maintaining the Eurocentric or Western view perspective and bias that has been in our social studies curriculum since we've had one. I think we know better now, and we should be doing better. So those are, if people have questions, I'm open to questions in that too, but just if there's anything else that you wanted me to elaborate on. I'm looking in the chat. Okay, so I believe Julie and Cecile have put some of those links in the chat. So.
And if people want to use reactions, there's a little heart-shaped thing at the bottom of your screen. When you hover over it, you can raise your hand. Then I can actually see you, and hopefully Hayley can see you too if you have any questions.
I want to give Pat another chance to sort of elaborate. I know we had quite a conversation about what are our children learning, but more importantly, maybe what adults need to learn and be teaching.
Yeah, thank you, Cecile. It's funny because I was just talking with my daughter about this just before getting online, because her and I have been asked to do a presentation to a women's conference coming up, and they wanted to know some practical things that they could do. So she was talking about the films that we've done and other things that are practical. And I said to her, well, Janice, why couldn't we walk again? I said, I haven't looked at the curriculum. I haven't, I've been out of the regular school system for many, many years. So I haven't looked. But I said, what would stop us, for example, from starting walk from Fort Pitt on September 9th, because they have a walk. Like Onion Lake hosts that gathering every year to remember the importance of those treaties. And so thank goodness for those folks, those young people who were finished the walk for us because of when we got COVID. So we were just kind of brainstorming as just before coming online. So we thought, okay, let's say if we were to walk from Fort Pitt, like we walked 20 kilometers or we walked to the band office in Onion Lake. Then we pick it up on the other side in Edmonton. And we walk from some location that we get together in Edmonton, and we walk to Fort Edmonton. And we ask young people, we ask educators, we ask our chiefs, maybe other, like church folks to come and walk too, because unless we get people really learning about the treaties, all of the we're not going to make a change. And I feel, the situation in Calgary, for example, without water and there's so many ways we can look at that as a lesson in terms of who we are as all of us, people of the land, in our own very survival, because we're not looking after the land the way we need to be looking after it, because we know we have to look after the land. The fact that Calgary all of a sudden didn't have water and they couldn't use their dishwasher and they couldn't shower for 15 minutes, and maybe you can't go for a shower for a couple of days, and and don't get to water your grass and wash your car. those things that they take for granted, because when you don't have water, you have no life, right? And what keeps us connected to that is knowing in our ceremonies when we don't have water, when we go fast on the land, for example, for 4 days and 4 nights with no food and no water, you know the gift of water. You know that if we don't look after the land, you know, it's so scary. So let's think about that. Like, how do we get things back to Indigenous people? You know, I think some of you know my son is a physician, and he has done a lot of work in the Two-Spirit community to help that community and to make it, you know, you often will see him on TV talking about racism and health, talking about issues that are life and death issues for us. So as a part of that, what happened for him recently, and if this comes through, this is ally work in the purest of sense. So there's a couple who live in Victoria or in Vancouver Island somewhere. Somewhere or other, they saw James, excuse me, in an article that was written, I guess, about the work that he does. And they're seniors, and they have land by Pigeon Lake somewhere, and they want to give that land back. They want to give it to the Two-Spirit community for the ceremonies that they do, because that's a very much at risk community because of colonialism. You know, they've been displaced because in our traditional societies and governance structures, they all had a place, as we all do, as we all did, right? We all had a place in this human family, and as a result of colonialism, people have been displaced, women have been displaced, and so forth. Can you imagine if we, those little acts, when we start to educate people, if those type of things could happen? It's like Brad doing the film on Reserve 107 in Saskatchewan. I see the hand up. I'll just finish. Reserve 107 is a case where the farmers, I think it's a Mennonite community, I can be corrected on that, but white family members anyway are in the process of trying to give land back in Saskatchewan. So there's things that we can do, just little groups, little people, you know, grassroots people like us on the ground, when we put our minds and our hearts together. So there's so many things to think about. And in the film, you see Sheila McLean, who's a white female professor who I handpicked to be the teacher of teaching about white privilege, white entitlement, because people are more apt to listen to her, right? Then if I'm trying to teach and they just say, oh, there they go again complaining. So if we have our white family members helping us, it's powerful. So I'll end there for now.
Yeah, thank you. So first I want to say to you, Pat, that's the first time I watched one of your films and I loved it. I just was so excited to watch it, and I'm also all of us are very proud of your son, Dr. James. I can imagine how proud you must be to have him as your son. It's just amazing the work both him and his partner have done. We're very excited. All of Indigenous communities. I mean, I'm from Musqueam, and I'm member of the James Smith Cree Nation. But I just want to say thank you for that. And I want to start with Hayley, though. Hayley, it sounds like you're not happy with the curriculum as the draft has been presented. Is there any way that we can maybe you can maybe organize a focus group? You know, I know we had Indigenous voice on all of the committees that was working on that social studies curriculum. Like Pat, I've been out of education for a long time. So I'm not not gonna even even begin to think I know much about the curriculum these days, but certainly what I hear you say in your overview of the draft, I'm not happy about it. If we are in fact going backwards, and that's not something we should have. And sometimes when it's just one person on these committees, it's not easy for them to be heard on those review committees. So I don't know if maybe an idea to, like I said, to maybe come up with a focus group. I know we can individually, respond to the proposed curriculum, but at the same time, it might be more helpful if a few of us were to get together and submit some group response to it. Now I'm gonna go back to Pat. Pat, ego at someone stuff man I'm gonna say it wrong. Just wait. I'm gonna go to my notes because I made a note of it. Ego at and stuff mano ma wa komtawin versus wakotawin. I didn't know that. I just learned that in a video with one of the women explaining that. How Wakomtawin is the connection between all of us that have blood. I think is the way I understood that to be.
Sylvia.
Whereas Wakotawin is all living things, related to all living things. So I'm very happy. No Chagwesian. Every day I learn something new. So thank you.
Me too.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. And thank you to the group here, Cecile, and all the being in good relations, all the work, all the great work that's done to bring you to this place and share with us. So thank you. Hi.
Just to comment on that, Sylvia McAdam wrote a book. So if you Google, I have it here in my bookshelf somewhere, but I don't know where it is. But so if you Google Sylvia McAdam, you'll find a book that she's written on Cree laws. And so that would also be very helpful around this.
I actually muted myself, but how do you spell that surname? Starts with M?
M, little C, and then Adam. But she uses her Cree name too. But if you Google Sylvia McAdam, it'll come up.
Okay.
I'll Google. Yeah, she's written a very good book.
Okay, hi.
I want to pick up on the challenge of the walk. I've often dreamed of walks that we might do too that would build awareness, and I've often kind of focused for United Church people on could we walk to the Edmonton Residential School and Pound Makers, because so many people don't know where it is. But maybe from the treaty office, or whichever way, but the 2 points or something like that.
Well, let's just think about that. Let's dream. Maybe that would be a starting place. Pound Makers, right? Because I know that that was where my late one of my mentors, the late George Breton, like he went to Pound Makers, right, to that residential school. So let's think about that. If we can dream and say that if we did decide we were going to try to walk, maybe we started, we would walk from Fort Pitt to Onion Lake to the band office, right? That's the place where that treaty was signed. Then we start at St. Albert and we walk to Fort Edmonton. Right? We've got enough time to think about that. And in that process, we're bringing awareness about we want treaties taught in every grade. And we want it taught so that there is a future for all of our children, our grandchildren, and those that are waiting in the spirit. realm to come and have a human experience, that their experience, that there will be a place where they will have a better quality of life as a result of the work of our thinking as women, especially because we're the keepers of the land.
Mhm.
We're the keepers of the water. It's our responsibility to be thinking this way,
Mhm.
you know. And yeah, who's to say we couldn't do it?
And I'm even thinking in Red Deer, you know, it would be a much shorter walk to go from Red Deer to the site of the cemetery, connected with the school there. And then there was a school with the United Church in Morley, Stoney Nakoda Nation. So I don't know. What's Julie put in the chat there?
It's just thinking even further ahead to the 150th anniversary of
Treaty 6.
signing. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
No,
just got me
good.
thinking listening to the film, you know.
good thought. Yeah. Mhm. Are there other comments and questions from participants? Debbie, I see your hand, your literal hand up there.
It works good. I just looked up Sylvia McAdams' book. Is called Nationhood Interrupted, Revitalizing Nehea Legal Systems. Is that how I say that word, Pat?
Nehiao, I think. Yeah.
Nehea
Nehiao.
Legal Systems. Yeah.
Nehiao. Yeah.
Yeah, I can have it delivered tomorrow by Prime.
Oh, you're quick.
Yeah. I feel like Brent and I were up. We were at that outdoor viewing when Pat announced that the walk would be stopped because of COVID, and it was very emotional for everyone who had made that commitment and had come to there and had kind of begun and were excited about beginning. And in our Brent and I, Brent worked at Blue Quills with Pat some years ago, and then we returned to Olds, and we are living here in a predominantly white farming community, and all of the nations are quite a ways from us, and there's a large Métis population in our area. Because there was work here and the Métis people could live here without getting kicked off years ago. And so we've just kind of begun here, but the walk came through Olds the year before, hey Pat? And it was impactful for the people who had anything to do with it, who even just witnessed it going by. And I feel like we would like to try again, that we would be happy to participate in something. Stoney Nakoda is like an hour and a half from here. So is Musquecheese. Red Deer's close. We did not have any residential schools here in the Olds area, but we did have a church, kind of group home sort of a place here at one time, but no, no markers, no buildings that are meaningful to Indigenous people, but we are in the middle of lots of things, right? And that's one of the things that we know, is that ours was meeting ground, and that lots of nations all kind of came through here. So I think our group would be up for a discussion too about participating in something that passed through here, or where we went from here to where something was happening not so far away. So that's all. Thanks.
Yeah, I thought I saw your hand, Shelley, and then Sue.
Yeah, I lost my little icons across the bottom. Pat, it's so good to see you again. I've also listened to you and many others speak through Rotary. We have churches and Rotarians right across Alberta. I did get an invitation to meet with the Edmonton Two Spirits Society on Thursday. I have a practice now of just going where I'm invited instead of trying so hard. And I met some of and what's really interesting is I work for a foundation right by the Transit Hotel. I grew up there because it was close to Saskatchewan. My family is from the North Battleford area, and then the ancestors are from Eastern Europe and England. What's interesting about this particular piece of land and this meeting is that in our building, it's a former Catholic complex. It's huge, 60,000 square feet, a closed church, a former residence for Franciscan fathers. We have Aboriginal Head Start and the Two Spirit Society. And then 2 blocks away is Niganan Housing, and 2 blocks in the other direction is Native Counseling Services of Alberta, supportive housing. We've been listening to social media and all kinds of ideas about who's living in that housing and what they're going to do to the neighborhood. I heard you talk about good neighborhoods for good families. And Davina Roussel also told us, don't overlook very small local connections. So we talked about, there's been powwows on that land. It's 4 acres. And we talked about having, there's been a walk through Niganan, through the neighborhood with smudging. And I really believe in placemaking and having relationships where you see people over and over again. So perhaps there's an opportunity too, like not just United Church, but there's so many Rotarians. Many are people of faith. There's a lot of people that want to participate. We have a couple of events coming up, but I've wanted to talk to you so many times, but I don't feel right calling you, but I thought I'd just put it out there and kind of update my friends on the call about some of the things that are happening in Northeast Edmonton.
Very
Thank you.
nice.
Really good to see you too, Shelley.
Yeah, for sure. There's Joanna also had her hand up.
I think I
I
saw
do.
Sue first. But,
Okay,
Okay,
Sue can
sorry.
go first.
Thank you. So I know that this was really powerful for me because I did a half-day walk and it changed my life. And the progress of that has changed things in Airdrie as well. Just because of opening my eyes and knowing that we had to connect. So one of the things that I really learned tonight, that we've been doing a lot of things in Airdrie, and we've been working with the city of Airdrie. We've done celebrations for National Indigenous Peoples Day. We've done commemorations for National Truth and Reconciliation Day. We've had elder talks, and these are all really good things. And we are now working on getting funding to do some workshops, and we're working with an elder on that. And that won't be ready until next year. It's taking a long time to get the funding, and it just is taking time. But one thing that I really got today, if I think about how important it was for me to walk with you, Pat, that day, and you say to me, the spiders are our relatives, and that not being my worldview in any way, but being open enough to go, oh, what does that mean? And realizing we had a presentation and a chance for question and answers at Airdrie City Council last week. And they've been very supportive financially, and they've been very supportive coming to our events and doing land acknowledgements and being there, but realized some things were missing. Some fundamental things were missing. And I think one thing we need to do, and one of our board members is here today, Shauna Simpson, so I'm glad she's here too. One of the things maybe we need to do is a walk, because if we have, and we keep saying to them, you need to make relationships with elders. So their plan for doing a reconciliation strategic plan was to have a non-Indigenous people person do it. And you just can't do that you just can't do that. That's not the right way to do it. And I think partly it's because they haven't, even though they've had the chance to meet with elders, they haven't had the chance to make that connection as friend. And I just realized that's probably part that's missing. And we're going to continue to reach out. And we sent a follow-up email today with some education things to do, like books to read, like, you know, this True Spirit and Intent of Treaty 7 was one of them. And just some education. But I think that's something we should plan probably in the near future is just to walk with the
Mhm.
elders and just walk and talk. That's it. So
Yeah.
Shauna, we'll have to talk about that after and see if you like the idea too. But Pat, I'm always learning from you. I always love being around you. So thank you.
Johanna, and then back to Shelley.
So, Pat, I apologize first. I joined a little bit late, and then I scribbled notes and didn't do a great job. Being Good Relations Network is planning an in-person gathering in September. And the goal of that gathering is to figure out what we can do better. You've just given us some great answers, but you asked some great questions. So our work is to invite equal Indigenous peoples as well as those of us who are settlers, so that we can have really good, deep conversations about how to move forward. And one of your questions, I think I typed part of it, but then forgot some of it, was how can we work together? And I think it was related to getting towards change. But how did you end that question? Because that would be an awesome one for myself to answer and to hear the answers from other Indigenous people.
Oh my goodness, I'm always asking questions.
Oh, I apologize. I will dream about what you said tonight and I'll figure it out.
Well, and we have it recorded, so.
Oh, so I
Go
might be
back.
in contact with Julie.
Mhm.
Because you had many questions in a row and I couldn't keep up with you.
Oh boy. Well, how do we work together? How do we figure out relationships? How do we come together to bring our children into these conversations? How do we bring, educate our families? How do we educate our community? How do we educate, the different organizations that we're a part of? Because the work is all of us together, right? And
right.
it gets extremely exhausting when I'm trying to convince people that this work is important. But Joanna, when you use your voice and you start to, educate yourself on these things, and then you sit and you have coffee with your neighbor and you say, well, did you know this? Did you know that they were bombing Enoch? They bombed Enoch. They bombed that land because it was easy for them to get the Indian agent to give them permission to have a place to target practice.
Yeah.
In the meantime, what happens out of that, and you can watch the film, The Crying Fields. When I'm doing training with industry and I'm trying to get them to understand this colonial history, I actually had one of the participants say to me, and it was courageous and honest. He said, I just thought that was just another Indigenous business venture. Here we go again. They don't know how to do business. They don't know how to run businesses, because you see that Indian golf course, it's all boarded up, right? And it's a derelict looking, it looks awful. And then, so people who have that stereotype of us not being able to operate businesses and, we don't know how to do things properly, they look at that and they say, here we go again, another one that's gone south. When in fact, every time when I'm doing industry training, I think I have to go talk to Enoch, and they need to go get National Defense to put up a sign there that says, oh, by the way, this golf course isn't working anymore because we bombed the land and now it's not safe, right? Because we end up getting this perpetuation of stereotypes. And every time I'm doing training, I think about it. But in there, I think Chief Billy was talking about, you know, having to try and get national defense to put a sign up, because you look at that golf course and that's people's stereotype, right?
We love
Mm.
to make assumptions, Pat.
Mhm.
It's very hard to be a curious person and ask questions.
Mhm.
We need to do the work together. That's all I can
Right.
say. So
Yeah,
my
I
dear,
agree.
my dear ally friends who are on this call and doing the wonderful things, it really is like we have to do it together, you know. And Cecile said we met, I think, 16 years ago. It's hard to believe that much time's gone by, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm. So Shelley and Debbie,
Yeah, I've been hearing about Airdrie because I follow Pat's LinkedIn page. And I'm just curious if you've also followed what's been happening in Cochrane, Alberta, with Rotary, Michael and Judy Bopp, the Alliance Church, the town of Cochrane, how they had a whole series of learning events with elders and residents from Morley in the town of Cochrane, a whole beautiful curriculum. And people got to know each other. And then the town actually voted to give a building where business would be an Indigenous building. And if people wanted to conduct business with Morley or with the Stoney Nakoda, there would be a place in Cochrane, and it was created with a lot of understanding. It's amazing what they've done because it's very local. It's a series of meetings in circle, building relationships, building trust and understanding, people that clearly were seeking to understand. So I'm curious if Airdrie has looked at that beautiful process. I mean, Michael and Judy are quite extraordinary in their work. They've created beautiful principles that we use in the neighborhood we work in. But just
Can you give me their names again? You know, I do follow Indigenous Cochrane, and I know they're really close with Stoney because they're physically close. I would really like to go out and meet with them. So I hear some of the things that are happening, but I don't know all the things that are happening. That's amazing that they have a space. I didn't know about that.
It's amazing. Honestly, it's small groups of citizens. Like you have to have your ears so close to the ground that you can hear the grass growing, is what my friend from Colombia says. And I've seen small groups, many women, very small groups, like Niganan was created by 7 women. And look where they are now. And it's about connecting hearts and minds and having that vision that pulls us together and attracts others.
so Debbie and then Julie.
I am, and so what was the name of that couple again in Cochrane?
It's Michael and Judy Bopp. I could give you a link to their, I can't even see the chat because I don't know what I did.
Yeah, and I can't find my little hand either. So
anyway,
my question was for Hayley. When you were talking about in the curriculum about how they had started talking with children in the very early grades about friendship and promises and things like that. Are there any resources that would support that?
There are. There's a wonderful resource that was developed for the Saskatchewan curriculum from Nelson Publishers, and it's called Under One Sun. And it's Under One Sun, and it's treaty education from kindergarten to grade 8. It's aligned with literacy and guided reading, so you can teach reading and guided reading at the same time as teaching about treaty education.
Okay, thank you.
And yeah, it has guided reading books and everything, a really good resource. And when I searched in the social studies curriculum just to see if they talk about promise or friendship at the younger grades, and it's not in our curriculum. Even teaching about promises and friendships and what that means.
The one I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was from Musqueam who said perhaps we could have a focus group around some feedback. And so, do you know what the timeline is for feedback for that draft?
So they have taken some feedback already, and then they'll continue to take feedback probably until about March next year, if it's the same as the previous curriculums. And one thing that when we met last week Pat and Julie and Cecile and I, one thing that Pat said that really stood out was how we need allies to use their privilege to advocate and speak out. So school districts have been given the opportunity to give their feedback on the draft before it was released, like on they called like their scope and sequence. So it's more of a framework for the draft. And the feedback that was given just in the one little focus group that I was in, myself and my colleague Terry Lakey provided feedback about the absence of treaties and teaching of Indian residential schools, as well as Calgary Board of Education. The people from their curriculum department provided really strong, well-worded feedback, and none of the feedback related to treaties or Indian residential schools was then included. Like they didn't make any changes because of that feedback. So it's not going to be good enough for Indigenous educators to advocate for it, or First Nations to advocate for it. We need a lot of Albertans to use their privilege to advocate for this and say, we want our children and our grandchildren to learn about treaties. Like so many of us wouldn't be here if it weren't for them, right? Anybody, unless you're First Nations or Métis or Inuit, we wouldn't be here. So it's very important to have that understanding and to have it in the curriculum in an accurate manner. So it has to come from First Nation voices and scholars and people that have done that work, like Diana Steinhauer or Wilton Littlechild, people that know those treaties, not just some buddy in Alberta Ed writing, oh, let's just say that the treaty was signed on this date and hypothesize why.
Well, I thank you and I hear you. And I would certainly be happy to. I'd like to do some of the research myself and so that I know a little bit more about, you know, the specifics or the details. And then I wonder if we could perhaps have a meeting, a Zoom meeting or whatever, say in October, and see who we could gather at that time, and then kind of go out from there with almost like a petition to people that I know that there's in our community. I feel like there's a lot of people who are supportive, but the items aren't high on their priority list. Not that they wouldn't agree with us or support us in our efforts, just that they're busy with other things, you know? And so if there's some of us who can do some footwork ahead and then take it to them and say, this is what we want, I believe that we would get their support, you know? So I'd certainly be up for that. I'm not sure who would host such a meeting, if it would be somebody like you, Julie, or if it would be you, Pat, or I'm sorry, the one that said iPhone on her picture, that was from Musquecheese, that first, who is that? Who is that?
Charlene.
Charlene?
Yeah, Charlene.
Thanks, Charlene. Anyways, and I would say, knowing what I know about the next few months and about September and how it is, would October be too late for us really to formulate some good work, I guess, that we could take then before the end of the year to those people that are receiving, you know, requests, I guess, or
Yeah.
I don't think it would be too late. It's kind of time starting January is when the feedback on the social studies started, and they took feedback for the other ones until March of the pilot year.
Yeah.
So I mean, the unfortunate part of that, kind of from an education or curriculum point of view, is a teacher piloting it, or a school or a district, they don't even get to pilot the entire year. So past curriculums, when they're released, they were piloted for a full year before they would have come out. But because of, I guess, their
reason,
trying to get it out there quicker. And the other thing that I think is really important, and I love the idea of the treaty walks, is how do we get educators, teachers across the province to be educated in regards to treaties. so they can bring that into their professional practice and into their teaching. They need to have that knowledge and deep understanding as well. So I think that would be, you know, even something maybe with the Alberta Teachers Association to get them to, you know, we could maybe set something up, collaborate with them to really get teachers connected as well.
In at the master's level, Dr. Diana and myself both teach for the U of A in that I think it's ED, well, it's a master's level educational leadership class, and we use the first treaty film in that class to help them to understand the oral understanding of treaties. And I think that's a compulsory course in their master's program. So at that level, but I can honestly say that those master students, in fact, I was at a movie theater with my grandson recently, and it was kind of dark, but the movie hadn't started. And there was a man, Dr. Makokis, and it was one of the master students, and he was talking about how profound that course was in changing his life to understand, right, this work. So that's a very important point, you know, Hayley. Yeah, it's got to be everywhere. It's got to be taught.
And treaties go deep. I've listened to Diana talk a number of times, and every time I do, I still learn more from her. And I have, you know, not certainly not, I wouldn't say deep enough understanding of treaties myself. And I probably know more than most non-Indigenous Canadians about them, just from my work with Remembering the Children's Society. We had Diana come and teach about it, and my connections with Wilton Littlechild and learning from him and his daughter. But you could do a lifetime of learning and PhD to really understand them in depth. So
that's right.
It's not just a one-time go to a 1 hour workshop and you got it. There's a lot of learning to be done there.
I'm recognizing Julie and Charlene, but first of all, I want to sort of say, I know we're at the 8:30 mark. This is great conversation and flow of ideas going back and forth. And we were a little confused ourselves about whether we were going to 8:30 or 9 o'clock. And so I think as the leadership, we're prepared to go to 9 o'clock. If you as participants need to bow out, that's fully understandable, but we'll carry on the conversation as long as people have contributions to make. Fair enough? Okay, Julie, you've been waiting a while.
No, it's all good. I'm just gonna put just follow up on Cecile's comment in the chat there, because with that meeting coming up, it would be really important not to let go of this, I think. Can we have a good base to work from? So can we keep building on that somehow? And I don't know, I just want to say how lucky I feel that we have Hayley and Pat here, and just thinking of all the amazing resource people that we have and that we need to work with in a good way. And yet again, I find myself wishing there was 200 or 2,000 people here tonight instead of 20 people. So let's figure out how we can really magnify that and use our different movements and connections, as people have been naming, to try to get this message out here. Because honestly, as a non-Indigenous person, I just feel consistently so fortunate to work with the people I get to work with, we all get to work with, and with the generosity that keeps being shown to us as non-Indigenous people for creating these spaces together. So I'm just feeling a real recommitment, I guess. And I think I'll save my question. I'll put it out there, but I don't feel we need to pursue it. When Pat mentioned like Two-Spirit people, I just thinking of the parallel actions we have going on to protect transgender, gender diverse, Two-Spirit people that are really being targeted across Alberta. But I live in Saskatchewan, and we have a mini-me government. I'll just say that right on this recording. It's total mini-me. Whatever Alberta does, Saskatchewan's going to follow, right? And they've got the same kind of targeting going on around pronouns policy. And it feels to me in my gut that is related to this curriculum question, that there is a fear of the changes that have been made and the alliances and relationships that are being described here on in this circle tonight, and that there's forces that don't want those alliances to happen and don't want those connections to be made. So I don't want to put anyone in a position where I directly ask them to comment on it. So I'll just put out that that's my observation sitting here, is it feels like all of these things are related. And so we need to have those strong intersectional relationships ourselves and to see those connections. And in our Christian tradition, kind of, I would say from scripture, name the powers and principalities that want to pit us against each other and want to make sure that people's stories don't get heard in an honest way. And they know that the kids being taught differently is powerful. They know that. So it just feels like we need to push back on that, I guess. And I'll stop with my sermon so so my Auntie Charlene can speak there.
Just hang on, okay, yeah, I'm unmuted. So, things don't happen for no reason. Creator has a plan, and look at a good example is that we share a month with two-spirit, like LGBTQ community, and Pride Month, and National Indigenous June. So that in itself is something we can use to promote all of this teaching. But I want to go back to a couple of questions Debbie had around what can we do in terms of that focus groups and getting our voice in there. And I like some of the ideas about maybe people getting together and it doesn't matter from what background, just to have that voice heard as a collective. And I think we could probably get that done. Like we as I don't even know if I can attend the September circle that's being planned by the group here. But maybe at that event, if we were to take the opportunity first of all to educate on this issue with the proposed curriculum, maybe take that opportunity and as a collective respond to it from there, as identify ourselves as this group and submit our ideas that way. Sometimes it helps to be to come together and do it instead of trying to all do the same thing in our own little cubby holes. So that was my idea on that. Maybe Joanna, I'm gonna leave that with you, because like I said, I don't even know if I'm able to attend that event, but I know that it's gonna be it might be a good opportunity. Again, our agendas are always full on everything, but you never know. I'm just throwing it out there, maybe an idea.
The blessing with this agenda, Charlene, is that we are really working hard to keep it open.
Mhm.
So we may be able to leave it with me. I'll ponder this to see how we can get through all of this, because that would be a good conclusion to show we do want to work together, because
Mhm.
we would have Indigenous voices there.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it just crossed my mind when I was listening to Debbie and all of you speak about what are some of the ideas that can come from this. But I really appreciate being taking the time this evening to come and listen and watch your one. I'm gonna go and watch the other. There's 2 more videos that I need to watch now. Maybe that'll be my coffee time tomorrow and my lunchtime. And thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Are there others who would like to comment? And there's a couple of folks that I haven't met before. Roseanne, And I don't know who's sitting in the St. Thomas group. You just even want to say hello.
Hello, I'm Roseanne. I'm trying to get my video to work, but anyway, I'm from Grace United Church, and Reverend Kathy just shared this. We've been with Charlene Bonner, and so we have been having workshops about the Indigenous people. So when this came up, I was interested in getting to learn more, and so it's a learning curve for me, and seeing maybe how then I can participate in the future. Also, being a newcomer in Canada and Lloydminster. So interesting conversation.
And you're not far from Onion Lake.
No, I'm not, yes. And coming from an African country called Kenya, it's kind of similar because we are all were colonized by the British, and so we have similar situation with the Indigenous, but it's just good to learn how deeper the Indigenous concerns are and what conversations are they are having and how they're pushing towards the agendas and the treaty. So interesting conversation. Thank you for organizing this and for inviting us into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Great to, you know, see people around the province here. That's great. I think I'll just say, I put it in the chat, but this Being Good Relations Network leadership group is having a Zoom meeting on the 13th on Thursday evening, and we'll certainly carry on the conversation about how we respond to the curriculum development. Both regions underwent a letter writing campaign previously 2 years ago to the Minister of Education. We did get a reply, not one that we appreciated, but I think, you know, we do have a good base to continue advocating for the teaching and the mandated and the agreement. I mentioned this the other night in a reconciliation circle on Friday night that I was in, and you know, Tony Snow sort of just really captured again. Well, it was kind of another broken promise, you know, promise that this would be mandated in the curriculum, and it comes back with nothing really. So and Shauna, you made a comment about the possibility of funding, but would you have anything else to say about that and what you've been busy with?
Hi, my name is Shauna Simpson. I'm Métis Soto originally from Manitoba, and I live here in Airdrie and I work here in Airdrie. I'm a teaching assistant. I'm the only Indigenous person in my entire school. So I end up being the catch-all for kind of everything and expected to kind of get everything done. So I've gone through a couple cycles of that of the school year. And so we'll see what happens this year. I'm a newer board member for the Circle Connection for Reconciliation group here in Airdrie and trying to do good work in a good way with them. I'm trying to, the reason I know about the grant was because I'm busy trying to help for National Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm helping to kind of get that to come to fruition with the city here in Airdrie and our group as well, because we kind of work on it together. But I don't know a lot yet of how that actually came to be. So I'm busy. I'm calm on the outside, but my little ducky feet are paddling furiously under the water. To try and figure out what I got to do. But yeah, I saw that this was a series and that this was the last film in the series. And so I'm going to go back and definitely look at the other two. Just in my own family, in my own personal life, I want to leave it better than the way that I found it. And so I'm really trying to be a good ancestor and trying to do what I need to do to have things be different than when I was growing up. So I was urban Métis, and it kind of just lots of things that have to change. So just trying to do my piece on that. But the grant that I saw, it was, I believe, a federal grant, and it was for dates of high significance. So 25-year anniversaries, 50, 75, that kind of things. So I'll see if I can find it, and then I'll email it out to you, Cecile, if that will help. I can't even think until I get through this National Indigenous Peoples Day. But I
Yes.
will certainly try and put that same thing. I'm doing stuff on my lunches and all that kind of stuff. But it was lovely to meet all of you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great. Nice to have new people involved always.
Thank you.
And I see in the chat that there's 9 people from St. Thomas United Church watching, so they can get their own little petition going. Here. I thought there was. I'm losing it right now, so it's time to end things, I think. Is there any other sort of burning comments? Yes, Shelley.
I just wanted to pick up on Roseanne's comment, because there are African-led organizations in our building as well, and they marvel at the concept of Ubuntu and Wahotowin, that reciprocity, the giving and receiving. And so there's been beautiful connections made where people recognize each other. A Cree grandmother has taught some of the children at summer camps over the last few years and participated in neighborhood events with over 300 people through singing and prayers.
There's a Central Alberta group called Ubuntu as well.
Yes.
And I've been trying to make some connections with them. Oh, I know what I wanted to say that sort of aligned with Olds and Airdrie is that I'm initiating a conversation for the city of Lacombe, trying to get some of the social leaders together to take some steps as well, because the museum has a mini powwow going on for June the 21st. But other than that, none of the organizations have really done anything. And the city refuses to make a land acknowledgement so far. And so we're getting together folks from the museum, the city, a city councillor that I've made connections with, the library, FCSS, the Lacombe Performing Arts Center, and Berman University. I think and the city's art and culture department. So I think, and those people are keen. So they want to, see how can we, sort of break down some of the barriers that are existing there. So, and I know that there's kind of a town working group for Ponoka now as well, and they desperately need that. So thank you for the inspiration that there is to keep working away at this. And I wonder if Hayley, you would just share that image of the fire that you talked about when we last met.
Yeah, I think that's a great kind of analogy to share. So it's from the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, and they use as their logo fire or some flames. And behind that is that the fire of reconciliation is a fire that we can all contribute to, and we may contribute in different ways or different amounts. Some people might have a log that they're bringing to the fire, and someone else might have a small branch or a twig that they bring to the fire, but it's important that we all bring something. So we're all at different places on our journey in reconciliation, and you don't have to, some people are maybe nervous to do something in case they make a mistake or do something wrong or offend somebody. And so with the analogy of the fire, it's just do a little bit, take one step, take a small step, take small steps often, and bring something to the fire. And what we also want to encourage is that if you're bringing a leaf this year to the fire, that maybe next year you're bringing a twig. So just like many of you have talked about, is increasing your learning, a book you want to read, a video you want to watch, or a person you want to talk with, walk and talk with. We're all here wanting to learn, and that's so important, so that if we're bringing a stick this year, maybe next year we have a couple of sticks or we have a log, just that we always are growing and learning and bringing more to the fire of reconciliation each time. And to encourage people around us too, just bring something little if that's where you're at right now. Every little bit is important.
Thank you for sharing that, Hayley. I've been carrying that with me since last week. Pat, is there any concluding remarks you want to make?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Cecile, for reaching out. Thank you, Hayley. Thank you to all the allies online, my friends Debbie and Sue, and the amazing work, and to the new ally friends and relatives here. We're all in this work together, and we do make a difference, one person at a time. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us all, and to Julie for managing the technology with this too. And I know her heart and soul are very much present with us in this work too. And, my prayer is that, all of us are teachers and examples, whether we think we are or not. And I just give thanks that we might continue to grow our capacity and to contribute more to the fire, to build healthier, stronger relationships going forward. And we ask the Creator to renew our energy to walk that talk. And thank you all for being here tonight. And if you choose to, please join through Julie, our network, and we get out an occasional newsletter to say something about what's happening across the province. And we'd like to collect stories all the time, because we need to encourage each other.